Hi, I'm Sarah Gabriel, former special education teacher turned social entrepreneur and founder of In Good Company. We help businesses build thriving teams by giving them the confidence and tools to effectively lead employees with disabilities. This podcast is for leaders creating interability workplaces. Together, we'll dig into what it takes to lead with both heart and business savvy and build workplaces where contributors of all abilities are not just included, but essential. Welcome to In Good Company. Hello, everyone. Today, we are joined by my friend, Caroline Young, Director of Ministry and Culture at Hope Heals, a nonprofit dedicated to creating inclusive spaces of belonging for individuals with disabilities. When she's not directing Hope Heals camps in the summer, Caroline also plays a pivotal role in initiatives like Hope Heals Hangouts, Moms at Mend, and many others, all fostering interability communities that emphasize dignity and connection. Out of the mission of Hope Heals, Mend Coffee and Goods was born. Mend is thoughtfully designed to be a cafe and marketplace in the heart of Atlanta's Buckhead neighborhood. And just if you're wondering, you can support and connect with Mend by visiting their cafe in Atlanta, or if you're not in Georgia, you can definitely shop their curated goods online. I have purchased many of their items. I would like to purchase many more. And you can learn about their broader mission at hopeheals.com. Did I cover it all, Caroline? At least some of it.
That's a wonderful recap. I'm impressed.
ChatGPT. Caroline, we've been working together. Mend has been a client of In Good Company's. We met last December, and we've been working together. I know, time flies.
Truly, time does fly. I didn't realize that it had been December, but I agree. I think you've been an integral part from what feels like the beginning, almost the beginning.
Maybe half of what you've been open for so far.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
Paul just turned 1 year old at Mend last month.
Yes, in April. Mend had its first birthday.
April 2025, whenever you're listening to this.
Yes.
Gosh. Well, tell us, Caroline, about Mend, why it exists, because there are some models that, they're a subsidiary nonprofit coming out of a for-profit business. Mend is a for-profit business that was birthed from the nonprofit Hope Heals. So maybe if you could just kind of elaborate on why Mend and where it came from.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you're familiar with the Hope Heals story or not familiar, Hope Heals is a nonprofit that exists to support individuals and families that are experiencing disability. And the context that we do that through is what we call sacred spaces of belonging and belovedness. And our founders, Jay and Catherine Wolf, Catherine had a massive brainstem stroke when she was 26 years old. Quickly upon joining the disability community, realized that there really aren't a lot of sacred spaces that are built for people and families that are experiencing disability. And so through the journey of Hope Heals Camp was founded in 2017. And since 2017, up until this summer, we as a Hope Heals team have really gotten to know and understand what individuals and families are facing on a day-to-day basis. One of which, of many complex issues that people and families are facing, is employment. Jay and Catherine also have a deep love of coffee that's intermixed with a really cool story about Catherine coming to eat again after not passing a swallow test for a long time post-stroke, and having just like a newfound appreciation and love of food and coffee and drink and all the things. So they kind of married this passion for hospitality and hosting and coffee and Catherine's personal experience with eating and drinking with this found reality that employment spaces are not made for those experiencing disability. And so after being in Atlanta for a few years, we went on a coffee crawl as a team with the Wolves leading the way, and started dreaming about like what it would look like to open a sacred space, a coffee shop that was an interability team. So one of our values is interability co-laboring or a mutuality of ministry. And from there, Mend was born. There's lots of fun details about finding the space and all of that. But Mend became one of the probably fourth or fifth official spaces, sacred spaces that Hope Heals fosters. And it's a year old. So that's kind of a short version of how it came about.
What a story. I remember watching on Instagram, just waiting and checking back every few weeks. Are they open yet? It's just been such a beautiful extension of what you all have already begun in your work
Thank
in the
you. It's
disability
been
community. So let's talk about space a little bit more because you started with what the theme of many of our discussions are at In Good Company, which is the topic of employment and creating spaces where those with disabilities can come and be recognized for the true contributions they bring, how we can support and consider ways that managers can do that in unique ways where they might be not be doing it in other places. But that's all the employee side, which is wonderful. But I also want to talk about the guest experience when they come into Mend because you all have really gone above and beyond to do something that we would hope would always be common in spaces, but many times it's not. So, can you talk about the accessibility of this space for guests that come in and why that's so wonderful?
absolutely. So our founder, who I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about, as he has already said, Jay, often says that a space cannot be hospitable if it's not first accessible. Like, how can you truly show hospitality in any industry if someone can't get through the door? And if they can't get through the door, then obviously you're not being hospitable. And what we've realized in today's world with ADA compliance is oftentimes it's the afterthought. So, like, sure, you might be able to get in the door, but how hard is it for you to get in the door? Or are you using like the last scraps of your budget to make a space accessible? Whereas with Mend, we wanted to flip everything on its head and use the first fruits. So, oftentimes, if you're in the disability world, a lot of the environments you might be in are sterile. So, unfortunately, you might find yourself in hospital rooms or OT, PT, speech, just rooms that don't honestly have a lot of beauty. Or if you're a part of a nonprofit, the budget they have to work with is just not robust. So
Yeah.
with Mend, we really wanted to do something different because one of our values is beauty and excellence that dignify. So we believe beauty is actually a really dignifying experience, and hospitality is a really dignifying experience as well. So, like, just because something's mission driven doesn't mean that beauty and hospitality have to be forfeited in the process. So there's a really amazing group of consultants and a special projects lead that help Mend come to life. And there were a lot of artists and um,
Mm.
chefs involved of just like thinking through how do we create an accessible space that's also really beautiful and hospitable. So everything from the bar height to the finishes, you know, like, yes, you want the bar height to be at a place where someone using a wheelchair would be able to order well, but that doesn't mean that you can't pick out like a really beautiful finish for the bar. Or like the cafe tables are able to rotate up and down. They're adjustable for
Mhm.
height for our friends with height differences or wheelchair users, but still have a really, really beautiful, you know, oak or pine finish.
Yeah.
And just like thinking through, yeah, like the lip on the door and the bathrooms, like, you know, we have an adult changing table in the bathrooms, and it's crazy. It's like one of, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's like one of 5 in the country or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really small number. And it's like what does that communicate to a mother who has a teenage son that needs toileting help or changing help in a public space, and
Yeah.
she's not able to do that in the restaurant or coffee shop that she's in? Like, that's not very dignifying. And honestly, they're probably not going to be likely to really leave the house because their world is just like not made for them. So just thinking through those extra details, um, and really valuing them, because we believe that our friends with different abilities are worth that, and that every space should be reflecting that.
If you have not been to Mend, please go. If you're out of town, drive into town and come visit because it feels like you're walking into someone's living room.
Mm.
And you mentioned a lot of the things I hope you would, Caroline, the tables that rotate so you can lower, raise the bar where you order.
And then our laptop bar with our bar stools is also at a height where you could use it if you're a wheelchair user as well. We have a a sound dampening curtain that can be pulled across one section of the cafe, that if you were overstimulated sensory wise, you could close it.
Mhm.
The floors and the ceilings were also installed with that in mind. So
Mhm.
people often like comment on why it feels calm in Mend, and it's because of the extra sound dampening that was put in. And the same with the private room could be used for an employee or a customer that was overstimulated as well, because it's also soundproof.
Going to a coffee shop feels like such a common experience. But like you said, the bathroom, the accessible bathroom, or the thoughtfulness of a table that can raise and lower without looking very, mechanical or, not
Right.
beautiful. That is, that's a beautiful example that you all are setting, and hopefully a new standard that will arise and a new mentality.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out, if you're a wheelchair user and you're listening to this, like you probably might not need to adjust the table height as well.
Mhm.
But something that small just communicates worth, that like you were thought of before
Yeah.
you came into the door. Like, no, it might not be absolutely necessary, but
Mhm.
we believe it's worth putting the thought in beforehand so that it communicates something to the customer or the employee coming in of like, oh, you have a seat here and a place here, regardless of whether or not you need to
Yeah,
utilize it. Um, so,
absolutely. Well, Caroline, I want you to now share men's values with the audience because they are so beautiful, so clearly so well thought out. And I know you've told me y'all are a work in progress, as we all are, but I can already see clear evidence of your values. So, with that, please tell us what your 5 values are, and then maybe hone in on one and tell us why that one might be special to you.
okay. Um, that's such kind language you put around that. It did take us, it was a team effort. These values getting here was a massive team effort and didn't come right when like Hope Heals was founded. They didn't exist. So it's
Mhm.
worth the work um, to get them out on paper. If you're in a place listening where you don't have them yet, it's really helped us in our guiding process. With that being said, they are celebration in the process, interability co-laboring, beauty and excellence that dignify, unreasonable hospitality, and belonging and belovedness.
I'm
And,
putting those in the show notes so people can just really sit and soak them in because they are so good.
well,
So
thank you.
good. Okay, so tell us about, maybe just choose one.
Okay.
Talk to us about it and why you love it.
I really love interability co-laboring.
Mm,
Um, in the context of Mend, that's our value. In the context of Hope Heals, it's called mutuality of ministry. I think why I would choose to explain that one is because I absolutely did not consider it, and it was not a part of my life pre employment at Hope Heals.
mm,
So it has changed the way I think about my friends experiencing disability. It's changed the way I think about work. And yeah, the way we're made to work and who we're made to work with. So essentially, interability co laboring would state that one person is not serving or pitying another person. So we don't believe that work and effort in life should be done to people experiencing disabilities. It should be done with or alongside of people experiencing disabilities.
yes.
That workplaces and ministries and churches and social spaces are better when they are differently abled. So at Mint, when we onboard new employees, we would say you're a part of an interability staff, and you're co-laboring alongside of one another, shoulder to shoulder. So there is no
Mhm.
hierarchy here based on ability. That we are better when we work together. Now, that may mean that like the way you come alongside of one of your coworkers looks different than it might at another coffee shop down the street. But like, how much better are we all for it? For known and being known by friends with different abilities.
Caroline, that reminds me of y'all's podcast. Actually, I don't know if you'll remember this episode, but Catherine was interviewing someone and the word proximity came up.
Hmm.
Just the many, many gifts that come from just being in the proximity of someone from the disability community. Where another way that I've heard it, my husband has actually said this. He didn't really spend a lot of time among the disability community until he started coming along with me, and he said, I feel like a piece of my own humanity was missing, and then I found it, and
Absolutely.
I got to know this community, like, which goes to show, like, a lot of times us as the helpers and builders and service providers, we can think we're here to help, and we are, but also they have so much to give to us that we're missing until they're present. We're in proximity of one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to remember that phrase of like a piece of my humanity was missing. That is absolutely true for me before I got to
Yeah.
know the disability community. I think that our friends experiencing disability teach us something about our inherent worth, like
Mm-hmm.
our belovedness simply for who we are and not for what we do or um, not for what we project oftentimes, because our friends with disability have to oftentimes live with some sort of marker on the outside. That we would say at Hope Heals, we actually all have invisible wheelchairs. It's just for those of us that are typically able, they're easier to hide. And
Mm.
our friends with disability give us freedom, a lot of times in relationship, to be our truest form of ourselves, that we can't
Yeah.
really experience in typically abled relationship because of things that just get in the way.
Yeah.
So that's a really beautiful point.
Did you know there are nearly 200 small businesses in the U.S. who are on a mission to employ individuals with disabilities? And we want to send shoppers their way. That's where you come in. Join the In Good Company passport game and support businesses that are moving the needle for disability employment. Here's how you play. Choose 3 businesses featured on our passport, snap photos with each visit or online purchase, and share them on your Instagram. Tag IGC with us and the business you supported, and we'll send you a prize. Grab your passport and instructions in the show notes or on our Instagram page today. Your team is so wonderful, with your guests, with each other. I was wondering if you had any examples or stories exemplifying the co-laboring that you're talking about, where you've seen the beauty in an Interability team coming together and working alongside each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, there's so many. I have a coworker, Griffin. He's a really warm human being and can like chat with any customer or coworker in the space, and spends a lot of time in our retail section for that reason, because he just helps people find what they're looking for. Griffin doesn't have use of his legs and has very limited use of his arms. And so he was on our hospitality team with greeting and retail, like I was saying. And then through a little bit of innovation, his parents helped him get a tray that was made to attach to the side of his chair.
Mm-hmm.
He's a food runner, and he can collect table numbers as well. So the way our system works is like when the bell dings in the kitchen, that means like an order's up, and
Mm-hmm.
Griffin can now like roll right up to the kitchen door, and one of his teammates in back of house is able to place the order onto his tray, let him know where the order is being delivered. And then when Griffin takes the order to the customer's table, I'll be like, oh, this is for number 8. The customer then needs to reach out and take their food from Griffin's tray and then replace it with their table number. And that like really seemingly small interaction, like that tray has given Griffin and the customer an opportunity to share a moment of connection that they might not have been able to before. So because of our society's just inherent ableism, like there might be some customers or people that for whatever reason feel intimidated to speak to
Mm-hmm.
Griffin, because he doesn't move around in the world in the same way that most people do. But because he's able to run them their food, and it gives Griffin a dignifying experience of working and doing a task that needs to be done, which is delivering orders. And then it gives customers the experience of interacting with someone that's just differently abled than they are, in the context of a space that makes sense, which is at work. So that's probably one of the first.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. And he since I feel like he's just always up to date with the latest gadgets too. Like now he has a robotic arm attached to his chair. And
Yes, auto.
It's called Otto.
Yeah.
That's a name.
Yeah.
he, I mean, he's getting right in there. I would say Griffin, and I love that you mentioned his parents because he's got a great team behind him. I can just tell. He wants to be in the middle of the action. He wants to be
Yeah.
engaged. He wants to
Absolutely.
find ways to contribute as much as he possibly can and find new ways to do that. And so that's
Yeah.
such a good example of not just us saying, "Oh, how can we help him feel included?" Like he's
Yeah.
inserting himself into the team and saying, "I can do more. Let me,
Yeah. I
let me
will
create."
say one of the quickest ways to ensure a breakdown of that barrier of like, oh, how can I help this person, of moving from pity or care to co-laboring, is in the workplace. Like if you ask any of our
Yeah,
typical employees, they're like, they better be doing their job because I need to be doing my job. And it really balances out the playing field of like, no, there's no pity going on here. Like everyone has a role to play and we need everyone doing
yeah,
their role, or else
yeah.
the goals of the cafe are not being met. Another really awesome story is one of our employees, Nadia, um, had a just more difficult time getting onboarded, I would say. So she really would struggle with like a task list, or feeling really easily
Mhm.
overwhelmed, or really needing a lot of support from our manager on like what to do next, or a Saturday particularly being really overstimulating or busy. And now, I mean, a few weeks ago we were talking about staffing, and our manager verbatim said like, I really need her to be available on Saturdays because like I really need her in here. And I was like, can we just stop for a second and address the fact that when she was onboarded, this was a pain point, honestly. Like it was overwhelming, overstimulating,
Mhm.
needed additional support. And now you're trying to staff a Saturday and saying, like, I really need this particular employee here
Yeah.
because she's able to get the job done on a Saturday. And I'm like, that's incredible. I mean, that's interability co-laboring at its best too. Um, there is no sympathy happening. She's one of the, like, most
Mhm.
diligent workers we have.
Wow, that is an amazing, like you said, it just kind of sums up everything you're trying to do. And I mean, in one statement, just that light bulb moment of we need each other. Sometimes it takes some work to get there.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And
that you taught me that.
it's taken me work to get where I like we it's taken all of us work to get where we are. You weren't
Yeah,
just born a director. I wasn't just, born founder of this kind. Like there was a lot of intentionality that took us to get to where we are. So why should it be any other way
absolutely.
in the disability community?
Yeah, you've taught me that a lot as we've worked together, of like it's an ongoing, journey, and
Oh
that
yeah.
we all need those additional supports. One last example I'll share
Please.
is we had another employee, Ty, who's incredible, one of the hardest workers I've ever met. And when he first started at Mint, really couldn't look any of leadership in the eye, felt very uncomfortable with eye contact, would get very overstimulated and overwhelmed as well. And he just left us for college in Florida. And, when he was giving us his 2 weeks, it was more of a celebration in the process, one of our
Mhm.
values, than it was like, I mean, obviously we were so sad to see him go, but his growth has just been crazy. And
Yeah.
his dad would tell you like he is going to school because of the opportunity that he had to be in an interability community at Mid. Like,
Wow, Caroline.
yeah, like he truly wouldn't have been ready to leave for school this time last year if he hadn't had the experience of being on an interability staff and like
Wow.
environment. And you're like, that changes the trajectory of someone's life, like,
Yes.
and the cafe was so much better for his work ethic. Like Mend was better for having
Mhm.
him on staff. So
I remember you saying at the very beginning, as you've gotten to know this community and Hope Heals, as you've all gotten to know and love this community, there are many challenges that and hurdles that are waiting in adulthood, employment being a big one. But I love how when we start working on the adult or the employment piece, it starts addressing and resolving some of the other challenges as well, like
oh my
social
gosh,
connection and
absolutely.
um,
Isolation, having
isolation.
somewhere
Yeah,
to go every day. Yeah,
developing new skills. I mean, I don't think any of us develop much when we're sitting at home all day while
definitely
parents go
not.
to work, or you show up once a week for your your social hang and then you're at home the rest of the time. So you're creating opportunities to develop professional skills, communication skills, gain new skills like running a coffee maker, running a cash register. It's endless. And so I love that that was an outcome of, maybe he came in for a job, but he left with so much more.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be the goal for everyone.
Ah, I did not know that story. That's
I
amazing.
know. It just happened recently. It is very bittersweet, but
Oh,
really exciting. Something to celebrate for
but
sure.
but also how cool that by him kind of graduating out of Mend, he's also making room for a new team member to come fill that role. And I know you've
Absolutely.
actually been hiring, and you told me about a new hire you had recently for the hospitality team. So maybe you
Yes.
can start over and do it with another wife now.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting.
Well, on that note, you kind of teed me up for this next question, and maybe you've already hit on it, but I want to say it clearly. What has it been like running a for profit business that balances great customer service while also balancing grace and support for the team members who are maybe new to the workplace, holding a job for the first time, and they may need some extra support? I know we've talked about this, so
I was
I've
gonna say,
share with our audience how you balance the two. And it's not a we figured it all out, but it's what are we doing today to work on this?
yeah, I would say I'm laughing because this is why we work together. Is basically, if you're listening, you should just hire in good company if you're wanting to do that because it's been so helpful. I'll be really honest. My direct report, our chief of operations, Leah, would say the same thing. It has been one of the hardest, most difficult, most worthwhile, like, yeah, just absolutely worth it things I think you could ever do because Atlanta is a really busy city. Um, and on top of Atlanta being a really busy city, Buckhead is, really busy. And the cafe, therefore, when people come in to it on purpose, they just want a really great cup of coffee. Oftentimes, our customers don't even realize that there is a mission behind Mend until maybe halfway through their first visit, maybe not even until like their second visit. So it is difficult to maintain a standard of quality, which we absolutely do. And that's very important to our owners and founders as well. And cultivate an environment for grace and growth and additional support. And what we're finding is that neither one will be absolutely perfect. Like you have to leave room for improvement always, but the work is absolutely worth it. You just have to go in being aware that like there's always going to be room to improve and that it is absolutely worth it to give and receive grace as you figure out what it looks like to co-labor. Because like all the realistic things are happening in our cafe. Like there's labor costs, food costs, changing our menu, figuring out what sells, what doesn't, making sure the latte was steamed at the exact temperature that the person needs it at, and then just paying rent, like keeping the lights on. Like you need business to
Yeah.
be good and busy, and so you can't sacrifice quality just for the mission. And I think it's important to point out like our employees experiencing disability are here for dignified employment. Like they are being paid the exact same as their typically abled coworkers and
Mm-hmm.
are here to grow and learn and yeah, to take on new job skills. So you want it to, I think a dignifying work experience is to grow and get better and better and better. Because we want people in Atlanta and Buckhead to come into the shop and say to themselves, oh, I do this and I'm realizing I could hire at least one person experiencing disability in my own workplace because
Awesome.
they're not cutting any corners here. Like my food
Mhm.
was spectacular. The hospitality was warm. I want to come back next week for a latte again. And I didn't have to sacrifice any of the quality just because there's a different, a interability staff working here. So, but you do have to be willing as a manager. You have to be willing to work with your employees and
Sure.
yeah, give a lot of grace and not lower. What you've taught me so well is you don't lower your standard, you just raise the support, um, and your company ends up being better for it.
You're making me a proud advisor. So
That's
glad.
like the one thing I have truly walked away with. I'm like, a good company would tell you, you don't need to sacrifice the standard, you just need to raise the amount of support that the manager is giving.
And sometimes that looks like extending the time it might take for someone to get there. Sometimes
Yes, that's another thing you've taught me.
it's not, can they get there? It's when will they get there?
Yes. Because it
And
might be a lot longer than you would expect.
yeah, and balancing that with the reality that you're a business and you have customers to serve today can be challenging. And something that we've said to many employers, including you all at Mend, is this is an investment.
Yes.
And in the business world, sometimes my least favorite acronym to hear is ROI. What's my return on investment? If I spend 1 hour training with you today, what's that going to get me in my team's efficiency tomorrow? And when you're in this mode of leadership and operating, yes, hold on to that high standard. Keep establishing, this is how we speak to customers. This is the quality of service that we're providing. But know that it's going to be an investment. Your general manager Ash has spent so much time with us, intentionally taking the time to learn. Okay, and she's a seasoned coffee professional. I don't know what I would call that, but
She is. That's what I would
she
call
comes
her.
from that industry, which was so smart on y'all for hiring, because she's so great at holding up that standard because she knows what excellent looks like. And she has embraced the idea that leading in this particular setting with an interability team means investing the time to add on a few extra skills to her skill set to lead in this way. And sometimes that means training an employee for 2 months on a skill instead of 2 weeks, and kind of coming up with a scaffolded plan to get them there and slowly hand over more and more responsibilities. Maybe don't start with the entire thing all at once.
And I think it's so important to point out because I'm so in awe of our general manager. She was hired because specifically of her experience in the restaurant industry, period.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all for her disability experience. So I think that's important noting that like if you're willing to have like a teachable attitude as a manager,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's what you're telling people all the time, you don't have to have a mission like ours because our GM does not have any disability experience whatsoever. What she has is like a very willing attitude and heart towards our Interability staff.
Mm-hmm.
She's able to leverage her restaurant industry experience and her management experience,
Yeah.
um, and put that towards her employees that are
Mm-hmm.
differently abled. And that's also where we realized we needed more support through In Good Company, which was crucial. But I think then the wins are also her wins. Like,
Yes.
I shared that story about Ty, but like truly that is Ash's win. Like she is the one that is in operations with him day to day. And so she's able to share that with our team of like, wow, like that is imagine as a manager knowing like your return on investment is that you're sending someone better equipped into the world, like to contribute what they can only contribute. What more of an investment would you want, as a manager that like, that not only is your business better for your employees, but also you're bettering your employees' lives in a multitude of ways,
Mm-hmm.
which is so important.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Yeah, Ash is truly a great leader. And you said my favorite word, willingness. You
Yes.
don't have to come in an expert.
No, no. But you do have to be willing.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe come in with a few skills, you know.
Yeah.
But
Kindness and patience would be key.
that, yeah, for sure. But she's doing great, and we're so proud of all of you. Well, Caroline, we are coming up to the end of our time. I could sit and tell stories with you all day
As
because
could I.
I'm just such a fan. Truly, you all were the client I wasn't even looking for and just felt like I struck gold when we formed our partnership. Remember our first time we spoke, we weren't even talking about any form of
Working
product. I had
together. No,
a totally different question for you.
poor Sarah sat down at Mend as a customer and explained to me what she did. And I immediately was like, okay, let me tell you about these 5 issues that I'm having at Mend right now and how you would you would help. And I just started telling you story after story of like, what do I do about this? And I have someone at the register who can't remember to say for here to go. And you're like, okay.
Let's work on that. Caroline, that truly was one of the best moments in Good Company history was starting our partnership. You bring us so much joy and so much hope in the work we do, knowing there are employers out there who are committed to creating spaces where everyone is invited to contribute and seen as real contributors, not, you know, charity cases. And it takes the work. And so you're willing to do it. And we love seeing it. And you guys are just, I mean, truly, anyone listening to this, please go drink a cup of coffee at Mend. Look up Hope Heals Camp. Spend time with Caroline this summer. I think your spots are actually all taken.
Yes, they're
Next
pretty
summer.
cool. But January 2026, you can apply for summer 2026.
There you go. Well, my favorite question to ask at the end, Caroline, because this topic is always growing and changing for the better, and I love to just celebrate the good work that's being done outside of Atlanta because we know that the challenges faced by this community, the hurdles they're coming up against, are still great.
Yeah.
Unemployment is still high among the disability community. So, who is someone that you're a fan of that you'd love to share the spotlight with today who is also working to address some of these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just name a few people that I had meetings with recently since they're top of mind. But L'Arche is an international organization, so they're all over the world and the US. They do have, I believe, 2 residencies in Atlanta, but they support independent living for young adults and adults experiencing disability. And they have typically abled adults in the houses as well. So it's like co living of some sorts. I probably, Tim, if you're listening to this, I just butchered that language, but I love what they're doing. So that's L'Arche. And then Jacob's Ladder is a school for kids experiencing disability in Atlanta as well. And I just find what they're doing so inspiring. They're everything from their teachers to their founder and her story and how it got started is amazing. And then I had a meeting recently with Marnie from Shepherd's Hotel, which is in Clemson, South Carolina. And it was just so helpful to hear from another business that has employees experiencing disability and how they're constantly making changes and what can they do better and how worth it is and how they work together with Clemson Life. So those would be 3 places that came up recently that I really respect and admire a lot in our work.
I don't know that you meant to do this, but I love that your 3 examples highlight different stages. You have a school with children preparing them for the world and the workplace and adulthood and community. And then you've got the workplace at Shepherd Hotel. And then you've got maybe simultaneously or later in life, the group living and how needed is that? That's another big topic that I know excellent problem solvers are working on.
Yeah.
So it takes everybody.
It does. It does. Yeah.
And I'm glad to know the Mend team and the wonderful work you're doing. So keep it up. We will link everything in the show notes today. Caroline, thank you for your time today. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on In Good Company. I hope this conversation gave you what you needed to take your next step. Special thanks to Georgia Tech's Institute for Leadership and Social Impact for the recording space and the coffee. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, share, or leave a review to help more leaders like you find us. Want more tools, frameworks, or a community of like-minded advocates? Head over to igcwithus.com to learn more. We'd love to connect. Until next time, keep building what wasn't there before. You're in good company.